in the home stretch of the NFL season, the time of year where games tend to matter more. Will teams get the number one seed, win the division, make the playoffs, or heck, maybe they're just competing for the number one draft pick? Every team still has something to play for, whatever it may be. And so, as always, given it's Saturday, we are going through our weekly pick'ems. But before we get into the video, I want to take a second to ask you to please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. Really helps out. If you're a fan of the NFL, you'll love this channel, which releases multiple NFL-related videos every Thursday and Saturday all year long. Now, let's get into the video. So we're going to start out by looking at my last week's picks, and I did not do too bad. If I can tap myself a little bit on the back, we went 15-1. Now I acknowledge Vegas went 14-2, which is still pretty good, but I called 2 of 3 upsets, which is always pretty good when you can call more upsets than not, given you're literally going against the grain. We called the Steelers beating the Bengals, as well as the Eagles beating the Ravens. I liked both of those ones. The ones we got wrong, or the one we got wrong, was the Jets beating the Seahawks, and that one hurts because we could have had a 16-0 week, and the Jets were up big on the Seahawks in that game. Aaron Rodgers fucking me over like he has basically my entire life, given, I'm a Lions fan, even though the Lions did a lot better against the Packers than many people may remember. Either way, that's it for our recap. We're still a little bit behind Vegas, but not too far behind, and we are catching up, though this week's going to be troublesome, as you'll see. And so let's get into our picks without any further ado. And we're starting off with the Pirate Bowl, the Las Vegas Raiders visiting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's be clear, neither of these teams have winning records, but the Buccaneers are actually a good team at 6-6. They aren't leading the division, but they are tied with the Atlanta Falcons for the divisional lead. It's just the Falcons will hold the tiebreak, and the Buccaneers, with the schedule they have remaining, should easily be able to leapfrog the Atlanta Falcons. I am taking the Buccaneers to win this one. They are the more talented team. They are at home. They are actually trying to win compared to the Raiders, who at this point are really just competing to get the first overall pick and get somebody like Shurder Sanders, Cam Ward, or heck, maybe someone else to throw the ball to Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. And so, yeah, this is an easy call for the Buccaneers. They should be able to win this no problem, much like what they did against the Giants a couple weeks back when they were up 30-0 and ended up winning 37 because, they didn't care at the end of the game. After that, we got an AFC North clash, the Cleveland Browns visiting the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Browns did win their game between these two teams only a couple weeks ago, with Jameis going off in that one, taking down the Pittsburgh Steelers. But one thing, and this shocked me to learn, did you know that the Browns haven't won in Pittsburgh in 20 years? 20 years! That is absolutely insane. Like, these teams play each other every year. This is not a matchup that happens once every, 3 or 4 years, and so, okay, you're 5-0, that's a lot. But no, this is 20-0 at home versus the Browns. This is nuts. And I think the Steelers are a better team. It's rare that you have a team, especially in the AFC North, beat the other team twice, especially the team that's worse beating the better team twice. So this is a Steelers victory. Russell Wilson will get it done. Yeah, the Browns defense can probably do something, but I trust that Jameis will, throw a pick six or something, much like he did twice this past week, and that'll be enough for the Steelers to take this game, even if it does end up being a bit more of a shootout than the Steelers would like. After this is one of the games that is really just a battle for trying to win the first overall pick. The Jaguars and Titans are going nowhere fast this season, and I don't want to talk about this game very long. Both bad teams. The Jaguars on the road with Trevor Lawrence on the IR, though. I'm taking the Tennessee Titans to pull off the win in this one. I mean, could I see this game going either way? Yeah. Do I care enough to do any specific research into, weather patterns, any of that? Absolutely not. I'm taking the home team that should be a little bit better, that at least has their starting quarterback, and let's move on. And we move on to the Carolina Panthers visiting the Philadelphia Eagles. And, another game that's really easy to call. What you're going to notice about a lot of these early ones, they're easy calls, and the home teams are the better team. And when the home team is the better team, they're almost always going to get the pick in my book, and this is one of those situations. I'm taking the Eagles to win this game. The Carolina Panthers have looked a lot better, and I mean a lot better in recent weeks. They have given some challenges to some teams. They had a really close game against the Kansas City Chiefs, and they had a really close game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, you can say that the Buccaneers are only 6-6 and not that good. And you can say that the Chiefs have been lucky to have the record they have, and you would probably be right. But it doesn't mean that they haven't been looking a lot better. This team would not have done anything close to that with the iteration we saw at the start of the year. Bryce Young looks like he actually might be worthy of being a starting quarterback in the NFL, and maybe the Panthers should stick around with him and just try to improve the team around him if this is what he's going to play like for the rest of the season. So I just want to give the Panthers their flowers. But when they're going on the road to the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that is soundly beating some of the best teams in football, like when they easily beat the Baltimore Ravens on the road this past week, yeah, I'm not taking the Panthers to win this one. It's the Eagles ball game. Let's move on. And we're going to move on to a team or a matchup of two teams that are currently in the playoffs in the NFC. The Atlanta Falcons visiting the Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins Revenge Bowl after he left the Vikings to go to the Atlanta Falcons. I will acknowledge it's maybe not totally a revenge bowl, as the Vikings would have happily kept Kirk Cousins in his services. He just chose to go to the Atlanta Falcons. A little bit less of a revenge arc, more of a return arc. But either way, while we talk about Kirk Cousins, the biggest thing to talk about Kirk Cousins is how bad he's been lately. He leads the league in interceptions. He leads the league in fumbles. He's basically done nothing for 3 straight weeks when the Falcons have lost those 3 games. This team has had an incredibly easy schedule, and they are 6-6 on the season. That is not good enough for this Atlanta Falcons team. I picked them to win the division coming into the season. And yes, they are in first place in the division. But that is not because the Atlanta Falcons are an amazingly good football team that has earned the number 1 spot in the division. No, they are the worst divisional leader, and they have looked terrible doing it, even in spite of an easy schedule. This week, they have to go on the road to the Minnesota Vikings, a team that is very, very good at football. And while they haven't looked as dominant in recent weeks, they're still winning football games. They're still 10-2, and they're still at home. So even if Kirk Cousins does get himself up a little bit more for this ball game, I'm still taking the Vikings at home to win this one. And if Cousins plays like he has in recent weeks, then this will be a sheer domination from the Minnesota Vikings, getting back into those clearly dominant wins that we saw earlier in the season from this team. And next up, we have a New York Jets, Miami Dolphins AFC East matchup. And the Dolphins are somehow still in the playoff conversation, even in spite how bad they looked for those weeks that Tua was missing. The New York Jets, on the other hand, the New York Jets are just the New York Jets. I mean, there's no other way to say it. I feel for Jets fans. I really do. I mean, you guys are dumb. The fact that you guys thought Aaron Rodgers was going to fix this team even after last year is crazy to me. It's like you had a 40-year-old quarterback coming off of a torn Achilles, and what he did with the Packers in his last season there is went 8-9. What the Packers did with Jordan Love as quarterback was go to the playoffs. Like, this was clearly a team that was better under Jordan Love, that being the Packers. And so why did you think an Aaron Rodgers that was not as good as Jordan Love, coming off an injury, being 40 years old, was going to turn this team around? Anyone who thought that was going to be the solution, I was like, I don't know what you're thinking. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the idiot. But I think history has now shown that no, I was not. And the Jets were always destined to fail. And going on the road to the Miami Dolphins, again, Miami Dolphins, I might be worried were this in MetLife because it's quite cold in the Northeast right now, but it's not. It's in Miami. It's never too cold in Miami. This team's been on a roll. Tua's been playing very well. Jonnu Smith looks like the best tight end in the league, and they need to win games if they're going to want to catch up with a team like the Denver Broncos and get into that wild card spot. So if you're going to do that, you can't drop a game to the Jets. They know this is must win, and they are the better team at home. It's a Dolphins victory. As I said, a lot of home team wins, at least early in these pick'ems. Next up, we have a matchup of not so good teams. We have the New Orleans Saints visiting the New York Giants. I guess both news, but maybe they need new teams is what these teams really need, because neither of these squads is what I would want if I were a fan of either of these teams. The New York Giants are clearly in full rebuild. You basically have Malik Neighbors, Brian Burns, and Sexy Dexy, and that's it. Like, no one else to speak of on the New York Giants team. And it's the same story with the New Orleans Saints. I mean, but if you're the New Orleans Saints, you probably have less, to be completely honest. Like, maybe Fashanu, who you drafted in the draft this past year. You got Kool-Aid McKinstry. I thought that was a good pick from them. But outside of that, like, this team's old. Like, Alvin Kamara's been great, but he's not a spring chicken. Derek Carr's been all right. I mean, a serviceable starting quarterback, no doubt. But you're a rebuilding team. Do you really want an older, serviceable starting quarterback? Your receivers, I mean, Chris Olave, when he's healthy, is great, but how often is he healthy? And yeah, I mean, just talking about both these teams, neither of these teams are in a good position. And so you might think, well, what you've been doing historically is saying, even matchups take the home team. Well, you would be wrong. I'm actually going to take the New Orleans Saints in this one. The New York Giants, with Tommy DeVito as their starting quarterback, or Drew Lock, or whomever it is, have been absolutely atrocious. Literally the worst football teams I have seen. Did you watch the Thanksgiving game this past week when they lost to the Dallas Cowboys? I mean, let's be clear. The Dallas Cowboys are not that good a team. And the Giants got their asses handed to them with Drew Lock, who should be a better quarterback than Tommy DeVito, starting for them. And so if Tommy DeVito is back and starting, which I don't know who they're planning on starting, I don't think it matters that much, but if he is, it's going to be even worse. At least the New Orleans Saints have a serviceable offense and defense. I'm not saying it's good, but it's serviceable. And serviceable is more than enough to beat what is probably the worst team in the NFL right now. And we're all seeing that Daniel Jones might actually be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Now, not a starting quarterback that's worth $40 million a year. Don't mistake what I'm saying. But Daniel Jones as a top 32 quarterback in the NFL, I do not think that is a crazy statement with what I've seen from plenty of other guys in the NFL in 2024. And after that, we have actually a really good matchup. It's an NFC West showdown. We have the Seattle Seahawks visiting the Arizona Cardinals. When these two teams met just a couple of weeks ago, it was a 16-6 low-scoring victory for the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. I picked the Cardinals to win that one, and I acknowledge I was wrong. It was a toss-up in that game. I picked the upset, got it wrong, but I still like my process. The Arizona Cardinals, in my opinion, have been a very good football team. Yes, they are on a 2-game losing skid after coming off a 4-game winning streak, but those losses are to the Seahawks in Seattle and to the Minnesota Vikings this past week. A 10-2 team where it was really close, and the Cardinals led for the majority of that football game. The Cardinals are a good team, and while the Seahawks are a better team than I think I've given them credit for a lot of the season, I think that they won because they were at home and they had the advantage of the 12th man to an extent. The Cardinals, I expect to be able to put up more points. We don't know if Kenneth Walker or DK Metcalf are going to be playing for the Seattle Seahawks. And so with it being in Arizona, I am going to take Arizona for the second straight time as the two teams match up in recent weeks. Hopefully I don't get burned for a second time, but I'm feeling good about the Cardinals, and I think the home field will be enough for them to get over the hump and get right back into the divisional race when these two teams would both be 7-6. And my God, is the NFC West just muddy as shit. After that, we got the Chicago Bears visiting the San Francisco 49ers. Two teams that are in absolute free fall right now. The 49ers at 5-7. They just lost McCaffrey and Mason. This team was supposed to be one of the best teams in the NFL in 2024. And they are going to struggle to just make the playoffs in 2024 with where they're at in the season right now. That is so sad for a team that had such high hopes and a team that is going to be in trouble in the coming years. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is that the 49ers have basically been pushing their cap burden further and further down the road, and having a young quarterback who was drafted in the 7th round like Brock Purdy, who's making less than $1 million per year, has certainly helped their cap situation. But he's going to be needing a contract come the end of the season, and he is actually being one of the few bright spots on this team. I don't know how much money he's going to get, but he should absolutely get paid. He's probably at least in the $40 million range, and that would be low for what I think he'll get. And that would still be more than 40 times the amount he is currently making against the cap, to be very clear. It is insane. Brock Purdy absolutely deserves that kind of money, but the 49ers are going to have to start to let some of their guys go, and their depth is going to go away. So they really needed this season to go well because they're not going to be the same team in coming seasons. As for the Chicago Bears, this team early on in the season looked like they were legit. They had a couple of bad weeks early on, like their first couple of weeks, but then they got on a roll, and they had one of the best point differences in the league. There was a period of time on this channel when we were talking about how it had been a month since anyone in the NFC North had lost. How the NFC North had the 4 best point differentials in the entire NFL. It was insane. And then the Bears lost on a Hail Mary from Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. That happens. It's fine. It's a young team. They'll bounce back. No, they won't. They have not bounced back. They have been atrocious ever since. Not atrocious. Like, they've been in competitive games 3 straight weeks against 3 really good divisional opponents. The Packers, the Vikings, and the Lions. They have been neck and neck in all of those games, but couldn't get the wins. And so going to San Francisco, a team that is not as good as those NFC North opponents, you might think that the Bears are going to win, but I don't think this has anything to do with the Bears' talent. I think this is to do with the Bears not knowing how to win. And because of that, I am taking the 49ers at home to take down the Chicago Bears. Bears, you can go get a nice draft pick. You have a really good team. Bears fans, you should be fine. This was not your year anyway. Take the L. Be happy with it. You got rid of Eberflus. That was a win in and of itself, so I'm taking the 49ers. That being said, if you are a gambling person, hear me out. This is the last thing I'll say on this one because I know I've been long on this game. History shows NFL teams tend to overperform significantly in the first week after a coach is fired. After that, it's moot. But the first week after a coach is fired, teams tend to overperform. So if you want to take a little bit of a spicy pick, take the Bears this week. They have a lot going in their favor. I'm just doing what I always do and giving the 49ers probably more of the benefit of the doubt than I should. And following that game up, we have the Buffalo Bills visiting the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are in that NFC West dogfight where, anyone can win because everyone's within a couple games of each other. And the Bills are really not in a dogfight at all, at least when it comes to their division, because they've already won their division. We are literally in December, like the first week of December, and they have already won their division. This team is just so good compared to the rest of their division, which is just bad. Like, the Dolphins aren't bad, but, without Tua, they were bad. The Rams at home, they definitely have a shot in this game. And if the Bills had nothing to play for, I probably would take the Rams because the Bills could probably just rest guys and not worry, and maybe they're not in the right headspace. But the Bills do have something to play for. While they're not playing for the division, they are certainly playing for the number 1 seed in the AFC. Given they hold the tiebreak against the Kansas City Chiefs, they are only 1 game behind for the number 1 seed. The Chiefs take 1 more loss than the Bills do for the remainder of the season, and the Bills will get the number 1 seed in the AFC. And I mean, that's assuming that they don't both lose a bunch of games and the Steelers win everything, and because they could probably do it. I think Ravens and Texans are basically out, so it's one of those 3 teams. Probably the Bills or the Chiefs, but either way, probably Bills or Chiefs, realistically. So I think the Bills have a lot to play for. They want that number 1 seed. They want the home field advantage because you do not want to go into Arrowhead. They know this. They have done it plenty of times, more than any other team, and lost. They want it at home. I think they'll get it at home. I'm taking the Bills to win this one in LA. Yeah, you can see there. And now we move on to Sunday Night Football. And now we're going to talk about the Chiefs. The Chiefs are at home facing the Los Angeles Chargers. And the Chiefs are favored in this game. And it makes sense. Again, it's at home. They've tended to beat the Chargers in the past. And they're 11-1 for crying out loud. But you know what? I'm going to give it away early. I'm calling the upset. I'm taking the Chargers. And why am I taking the Chargers? I'm taking the Chargers because of what I've seen from the Chiefs in recent weeks. The last 2 weeks, they barely beat the Raiders and the Panthers. And while I can acknowledge the Panthers have actually looked like a better unit, I will fully acknowledge that. The Raiders have looked like absolute ass. I mean, literal ass for the majority of the season, with the exception of Brock Bowers and maybe a little bit of Jacoby Myers. But the Chiefs barely beat them thanks to a botched snap. They barely beat the Broncos earlier this season, a team very similar to the Chargers, thanks to a blocked field goal. The Chiefs have been skating by the skin of their teeth, and they are going against a good football team in the Chargers who are hot, who can score offensively, who can play good defense. I think the Chargers can pull this one out, hand the Chiefs their second loss. Their rabbit's foot has got to run out at some point, so Los Angeles Chargers to win this, and if the previous game I'm right about too, the Bills win it, the Bills move to number 1 in the AFC, much to the chagrin of all those Chiefs fans out there. And then our final game is the Bengals visiting the Dallas Cowboys on Monday Night Football. The Cowboys actually don't have a terrible record on the NFL season right now, which is actually pretty crazy to say because the Cowboys should have been a pretty good team coming into the season, but they've been so bad. I thought they were like 3 or 2 wins. No, they're like just under 500. And if they win this game, I think they move to 500, which is crazy for how bad this team has seemed, especially when you look at teams in the NFC. Like, that's in the playoff race in the NFC, which is kind of nuts. I mean, in the AFC too, in fairness, but kind of nuts. On the flip side, the Bengals have actually looked very good, but are 4-8. Like, record-wise, they are being atrocious. But, you know, on the field, not so bad. It's just that they can't seem to get over the hump. Early on in the season, full acknowledgement, they look bad. They lost to the Patriots. That was brutal. They lost to the Commanders. That looked brutal at the time, but the Commanders ended up being a better team. They lost twice to the Ravens. They've lost to the Steelers. Like, they've lost a lot of games that you would have said, Bengals, you had to win that one, but they weren't able to do it. Is this going to be another one of those games at the Dallas Cowboys? I don't think so. Even though it's in Jerry's world, and in past season, the Cowboys have been very good in Jerry's world, this season has been the opposite. With the exception of the Thanksgiving game, the Cowboys have been atrocious in Jerry's world. It's Cooper Rush starting at quarterback. I know that the Bengals don't have that great of a defense, but with Cooper Rush starting at quarterback, CeeDee Lamb being questionable to play in the game, I think the Bengals will be able to do what they need to do and actually finally get back in the win column. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong and the Bengals keep on keeping on and sucking, but I'm taking the Bengals in this one. And so let's get to our picks. Again, only 13 games this week. We have 6 teams on bye in week 14, which is shocking, especially if you're playing in fantasy and this is your last week of the regular season. This is a brutal bye week to be dealing with, especially if you have a lot of those guys. I'm lucky enough that in none of my leagues doesn't matter. One league, I'm already out of the playoffs, so it doesn't matter. In the other league, I've already locked up a first round bye, so it doesn't matter. So I don't really care. Either way, you can see my picks here. I am filming this on Friday, so I already know I was wrong on the Packers and Lions. And oh, have I never been so happy to be wrong. I picked that one in our power rankings video. I did think, given how injured the Lions were, the Packers would be able to pull it off. And it was a hell of a back and forth game, but the Lions got the win. I am ecstatic. I'm not going to be able to match last week's 15-1 because my max now is 12-1, but who knows? Maybe I can pull it off. Hopefully I can pull it off, but I'm going to have trouble beating Vegas because my only upset remaining is going to be the Chargers beating the Chiefs. Everything else I was lockstep with Vegas, as you can see here. I'm still a few games behind Vegas. Hopefully I don't fall further behind Vegas with the Chiefs victory, but again, it's going to be tough to come back, especially given I really only have 4 weeks to do it, week 15, 16, 17, 18. We're going to try, but it's going to be tough. Either way, that's it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope you all enjoyed the Sunday and Monday of the NFL season. A reminder, if you don't already watch us over on Twitch, we do live streams of all the primetime games. That's Thursday night, that's Sunday night, that's Monday night on Twitch. It's D-Rose Sports, same as what's here on YouTube. Come join us there. Join the community. We're growing. It's been fantastic. It's been a lot of fun this season. I hope to see you all there. And remember, as always, leave a like and comment down below. Help us out. Help us grow. Enjoy the football. Peace!